Right now, 17 million people are living on top of one of the greatest secrets in human history. Every morning, they cross a bridge that connects two continents, Asia on one side, Europe on the other, as casually as you'd cross a street. 17 million people, two continents, one city. And beneath their feet, 6,000 years of blood, fire, ambition, and resurrection. Istanbul is not just old. It is the city that refused to die. Every empire that ever touched it, Greek, Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, believed they had tamed it. They built their palaces here, crowned their emperors here, buried their generals here. And one by one, they fell. Istanbul endured. And here's the question that will haunt every minute of the next 30. How does a city survive everything? Let's find out.
Era 1. Before the city. Byzantium, 657 BC. The precise hinge point between two worlds. The wind tastes of salt and fish. To your left, the Bosphorus Strait, dark, fast, unpredictable, connects the Black Sea to the Sea of Marmara. To your right, a calm, natural harbor, so perfect, so sheltered, so impossibly blue that sailors call it the Golden Horn. And directly across the water, Asia. You can see it from here. You could almost swim to it. You are watching the Greek colonists from Megara, a city-state near Corinth, step ashore and plant a flag. Their leader is a man named Byzas, and according to the oracle at Delphi, he was told to build his city opposite the land of the blind. For years, scholars argued about what that meant. The answer arrived when they saw this peninsula. Across the strait, another Greek colony, Chalcedon, had already been built on the Asian shore. A fine location, but missing the Golden Horn, the greatest natural harbor in the Mediterranean world. Chalcedon had been built in plain sight of something extraordinary without seeing it. They were, apparently, blind. Byzas was not. He named his new city Byzantium after himself. Modest? No, but effective.
Here is something that almost no one knows. For the first 3 centuries of its existence, Byzantium was considered a backwater, a useful trading post, a toll booth city. Ships moving grain from the Black Sea to Athens paid a tariff to pass through the Bosphorus. Byzantium grew rich by doing almost nothing except existing in exactly the right place. But in 340 BC, someone noticed. His name was Philip II of Macedon, the father of Alexander the Great, and he laid siege to Byzantium with everything he had. He came close, very close. The story goes that his soldiers crept toward the walls in the dead of night. And then, in what the citizens swore was a miracle, clouds parted and moonlight flooded the battlefield. The Byzantines sounded the alarm. Philip retreated. The crescent moon, they said, had saved them. They minted it onto their coins. Centuries later, a different empire would place that same crescent on its flag. History has long memories. Byzantium survived Philip. It would not always survive what came next.
Era 2. The Roman Machine, 146 BC and AD 330. It is 146 BC, and Rome is consuming the world. Greece falls. The Mediterranean becomes a Roman lake. Byzantium watches, hedges its bets, and makes the one decision that separates clever cities from dead ones. It submits, carefully, diplomatically, on favorable terms, rather than forcing Rome to crush it. For nearly 3 centuries, Byzantium sits comfortably inside the Roman Empire, thriving, taxing, trading. It is so comfortable, so reliably profitable, that the city barely changes. Then it makes one catastrophic mistake. In AD 193, a Roman civil war erupts over who controls the empire. 3 generals claim the throne simultaneously. Byzantium backs the wrong one, Pescennius Niger. The winner is Septimius Severus, and Septimius Severus, a man not known for mercy, remembers. He lays siege to Byzantium for 3 full years, AD 193 to 196. 3 years. The city holds until it absolutely cannot hold anymore. When the gates finally open, Severus tears down the walls. He strips the city of its privileges. He demotes it to a village, administratively subordinate to a minor neighboring town. After 800 years of careful prosperity, Byzantium is suddenly nothing. But, and this is the unexpected turn, Severus feels guilty about it. He rebuilds. He adds a hippodrome, new baths, expanded civic buildings. He lets his son Caracalla add more. And so the city that Severus destroyed, he also accidentally made larger and grander than it had ever been before. Destruction and reconstruction. Byzantium's first rehearsal for a pattern it would perform again and again and again. Now comes the moment that changes everything. Not just for this city, for the entire Western world. Now comes the moment that changes everything. Not just for this city, for the entire Western world. It is October 28th, AD 312. At the Milvian Bridge outside Rome, a general named Constantine looks at the sky and sees, or claims to see, a flaming cross. He orders his soldiers to paint Christian symbols on their shields. They win. He becomes emperor. Christianity becomes the favored religion of Rome. And Constantine needs a new capital. Rome is too far west, too politically entangled, too associated with the old order. He needs a city at the center of his empire, a city surrounded by water on 3 sides, defensible, a city at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, controllable, a city already 400 years old with existing infrastructure, practical. He chooses Byzantium. On May 11th, AD 330, Constantine consecrates his new capital. He calls it Nova Roma, New Rome. The people call it Constantinople, the city of Constantine.
He pours resources into it on a scale the ancient world had never seen. He builds a new hippodrome directly next to the old one, capable of holding 100,000 spectators. He constructs the Great Palace, an entire city within a city of halls, gardens, chapels, and audience chambers spreading across the southeastern tip of the peninsula. He imports art from across the empire, the serpent column from Delphi, the statue of the Colossus of Rhodes, filling his new capital with the trophies of Greek civilization. In less than 6 years, he transforms a backwater Roman town into the most magnificent city in the Christian world. What almost no one tells you? Constantine himself was almost certainly not a sincere Christian. He was baptized only on his deathbed, a common hedge for emperors who weren't sure the new religion would last. He kept the pagan title Pontifex Maximus his entire life. The man who turned the world Christian may have believed almost none of it. He simply recognized that Christianity was the most powerful political tool of his century. Constantinople, built on a perhaps cynical miracle, would become the center of Christian civilization for over 1,000 years. Era 3. The Eastern Rome. Constantinople, AD 330 to 1204. It is AD 537. And you are standing inside a building that should not exist. The Hagia Sophia, Holy Wisdom, has just been completed after 5 years of frantic construction ordered by Emperor Justinian I. You crane your neck upward and see a dome 43 meters high, its base pierced by 40 windows arranged in a perfect ring. In the morning light, the dome appears to float. It appears to have no support. Justinian's own court historian, Procopius, writes that it seems suspended from heaven by a golden chain. This building is the largest enclosed space on Earth, and it will hold that record for nearly 1,000 years. Justinian commissioned it after his first Hagia Sophia burned to the ground during the Nika riots of 532. 5 days of street warfare so violent that 30,000 people died in the hippodrome alone, slaughtered by imperial troops when they refused to disperse.
Justinian had almost fled the city. His wife, the Empress Theodora, a former actress from the city's slums, a woman who had no business being empress except for the sheer force of her personality, reportedly told him, "Those who have worn the crown should never survive its loss. I shall never see the day when I am not saluted as empress. The purple is the noblest shroud." He stayed. He crushed the riot. He built the Hagia Sophia. If you want to understand Constantinople, understand this. It was a city of extremes, always, of beauty and massacre, of genius and brutality, of purple silk robes and screaming mobs. A city where the Hippodrome wasn't just a racetrack, it was a political arena, where chariot racing factions called the Blues and the Greens functioned as organized gangs, political parties, and religious interest groups simultaneously, capable of making and breaking emperors.
The Byzantines, a word they never used for themselves, by the way, they called themselves Romans until the very end, developed the most sophisticated bureaucracy in the medieval world. They invented the concept of Greek fire, a napalm-like incendiary weapon launched from warships that burned on water, burned underwater, and could not be extinguished with anything except sand, urine, or vinegar. Its exact formula remains unknown today. Every chemist and historian who has ever tried to recreate it has failed. For over 700 years, Constantinople's triple walls, the Theodosian walls, built between AD 408 and 413, stretching nearly 6 kilometers with 96 towers, made the city essentially impregnable. More than 20 sieges were attempted. All of them failed. The Avars tried in 626. The Arabs tried twice, 674 and 717. The Bulgarians tried in 813. Every army shattered itself against those walls and went home. Constantinople was not just a city. It was the idea that civilization could hold against chaos. And then, in 1204, came the most shocking betrayal in medieval history.
The Fourth Crusade was supposed to reclaim Jerusalem for Christianity. Instead, a debt, a political dispute, and pure greed turned the Crusaders' swords toward the greatest Christian city in the world. On April 12, 1204, the Crusaders, Western European Christians, supposedly allies, breached the walls of Constantinople. What followed was 3 days of systematic looting, so thorough it made Byzantine historians physically sick to record. Churches were stripped. The Hagia Sophia was ransacked by soldiers who got drunk on the communion wine and put a prostitute on the patriarch's throne. Centuries of accumulated art, manuscripts, gold, and sacred relics were loaded onto boats and shipped to Venice, Rome, and Paris, where much of it still sits today. Pope Innocent III, the very man who had called the Crusade, wrote to the Crusade leaders afterward, "How can the Church of the Greeks be expected to return to devotion for the Apostolic See when she has seen in the Latins an example of perdition and works of darkness?" Constantinople never fully recovered. Its population, which had reached perhaps 500,000 at its peak in the 6th century, fell to perhaps 50,000 by the mid-15th century. The once invincible empire limped forward, a shadow, a ghost wearing a crown. The wolves were gathering. The last days of Rome.
Era 4. The Fall. Constantinople, May 29, 1453. It is 2 a.m. on May 29, 1453, and you can hear the cannons in the dark. They have been firing for 53 days. The man responsible for those cannons is 21 years old. His name is Mehmed II, Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, and he has been obsessed with Constantinople since childhood. He reportedly slept with a copy of Alexander the Great's biography under his pillow. He read everything ever written about the city's defenses. He learned the science of siege warfare with the devotion of a scholar. And then he found a Hungarian engineer named Urban, who at first offered his cannon-building services to the Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI. The emperor couldn't afford him. Mehmed could. Urban built Mehmed a cannon called the Basilica, 62 feet long, capable of firing stone balls weighing over 1,200 pounds. When it was first test-fired, the shockwave shattered windows a mile away and reportedly induced miscarriages in pregnant women nearby. The Theodosian walls, which had stopped every army for 1,000 years, had never faced anything like this.
Constantinople's defenders numbered approximately 7,000. Mehmed's army between 80,000 and 120,000. The emperor knew the odds. He had sent desperate messages to Western Europe, begging for help. The Pope sent a few ships. Venice and Genoa sent token forces. The great powers of Europe decided, after careful calculation, that Constantinople was not worth the trouble. They let Rome die. On the night of May 28th, Emperor Constantine XI walked through every church in the city and prayed. He said farewell to his court and his generals. He went to the Hagia Sophia and received communion. Then he went to the walls. At 1:30 a.m. on May 29th, Mehmed ordered the final assault. Here is what you were not told in school. Mehmed II did not destroy the city. He rode to the Hagia Sophia and ordered it converted to a mosque, adding a muezzin's call, covering the Christian mosaics, but he explicitly forbade the looting that had defined the Fourth Crusade's conquest. He issued a proclamation guaranteeing the safety and property of the city's Greek, Armenian, and Jewish inhabitants. He appointed a new Greek Orthodox patriarch within weeks. He called himself Kaiseri Rum, Caesar of Rome. He considered himself the legitimate successor to the Byzantine emperors, not their destroyer. He was 21 years old. He spent the rest of his life trying to actually become the new Roman emperor, campaigning to control both the Eastern and Western empires simultaneously. He nearly took Rome itself before he died in 1481. Constantinople, the city Constantine built to be the new Rome, had simply found a new Caesar.
Era 5. The Golden Age of the Ottomans. Istanbul, 1453 to 1683. Mehmed renamed the city. He called it Constantinia in official documents, but the people called it Istanbul, almost certainly derived from the Greek phrase "istin polin," meaning simply to the city or in the city. When Greeks said, "I'm going to the city," they meant one city. Every other city in the world had a name. This one was simply the city. Mehmed's first act of city planning was to repopulate it. He forcibly relocated entire communities, Greeks from the Aegean, Armenians from Anatolia, Jews expelled from Spain in 1492, to Istanbul. He wanted a cosmopolitan capital, a city of artisans, merchants, scholars, and administrators. He got it. By the early 16th century, Istanbul's population had recovered to over 400,000, making it the largest city in Europe. Then came the greatest sultan the Ottoman Empire would ever produce. Suleiman I took the throne in 1520. You know him in the West as Suleiman the Magnificent. His own people called him Kanuni, the lawgiver. He ruled for 46 years. Under his reign, the Ottoman Empire stretched from Algeria to Persia, from Hungary to Yemen. He twice besieged Vienna. He personally led 13 military campaigns. He was, by any measurable standard, the most powerful ruler on earth during the 16th century. But Suleiman's greatest legacy in Istanbul was stone.
He appointed an architect named Mimar Sinan, himself a former Christian from Anatolia, conscripted as a boy through the Devshirme system and trained as a military engineer, and gave him unlimited resources to redesign the city. Sinan built or contributed to over 370 structures across the Ottoman Empire. In Istanbul alone, his work includes the Süleymaniye Mosque complex, completed 1558, built on a hill so it would be visible from every direction, and the Selimiye Mosque in Edirne, which Sinan himself considered his masterpiece. What no one tells you about Sinan, he was pushing 80 years old when he built what he considered his finest work. He designed the Selimiye's dome to be wider than the Hagia Sophia's by 1 inch,
a deliberate architectural declaration that Ottoman civilization had surpassed Byzantium. He was an old man making a statement to eternity. Inside Topkapi Palace, the Ottoman imperial court built on the very tip of the peninsula where Byzantium first landed, a different kind of drama was unfolding. The Topkapi was not just a palace, it was a government, a military headquarters, a school, a harem, and a treasury, all behind a single guarded gate. The harem, the private residential quarters of the Sultan, his wives, concubines, and children, housed up to 1,000 people and was guarded by African eunuchs.
The political intrigue within those walls would have made Machiavelli blush. Mothers of princes spent their lives maneuvering to ensure their son became sultan. Brothers of new sultans were routinely executed upon succession, a practice codified into law by Mehmed II himself to prevent civil wars. Dozens of Ottoman princes were strangled with a silken cord, specifically because royal blood could not be shed. Ottoman succession was a game of survival disguised as dynastic tradition. Roxolana, a Ukrainian slave woman who became Suleiman's legal wife, the first sultan's consort to hold that status in over a century, was reportedly so influential that European ambassadors suspected her of sorcery. She convinced Suleiman to execute his most capable son, Shehzade Mustafa, from a previous relationship, clearing the throne for her own sons. Historians still debate whether she was a power-hungry manipulator or a woman using every tool available in a system that gave her no official power at all. She was probably both. The city itself, through all of this, kept growing, kept breathing, kept trading.
The Grand Bazaar, founded in 1461, just 8 years after the conquest, became the largest covered market in the world, with 61 streets, over 4,000 shops, and daily foot traffic that ambassadors described as a city within a city. The spice trade flowed through it, silk from China, pepper from India, coffee from Yemen. Yes, coffee, first introduced to Europe specifically through Istanbul, where the world's first coffee houses opened in 1554, a century before London's first coffee shop. Think about that. Every morning when you make coffee, you are participating in a ritual that entered Western civilization through Istanbul.
Era 6. Cracks in the Empire. Istanbul, 1683-1908. September 11th, 1683. The Ottoman army, 150,000 strong, is defeated at the gates of Vienna by a Polish-led coalition. It is the second Ottoman attempt on Vienna, and the last. The tide turns here, not with a speech or a treaty, but a battle. For the next 2 centuries, the Ottoman Empire, the empire built from this city, radiating outward in every direction, slowly bleeds. Istanbul itself remains magnificent, and this is part of the problem. The sultans grow more isolated in the Topkapi than in the newer Dolmabahce Palace, a European-style palace built on the Bosphorus shore in 1856, modeled deliberately on Versailles, its construction costing 35 tons of gold. While the empire contracted on every frontier, its capital grew more ornate. Here is the statistic that explains everything. In 1700, the Ottoman Empire controlled roughly 2 million square miles. By 1900, it controlled less than 700,000. In 2 centuries, it lost 2/3 of its territory. Greece, Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, Cyprus. Each loss was a wound, and each wound drained Istanbul of resources, of confidence, of the certainty that had made it the center of the world.
The Janissaries, once Mehmed II's elite shock troops, the finest infantry of the 15th century, had by the early 19th century become a political faction so powerful and so conservative that they blocked every attempted military reform. Any sultan who tried to modernize the army faced a Janissary revolt. Sultan Mahmud II finally solved this problem in 1826 in an event the Ottomans quietly called the Auspicious Incident.
He surrounded the Janissary barracks in Istanbul with loyal artillery and simply fired until the barracks were rubble. Approximately 6,000 Janissaries died. He abolished the corps entirely. An institution that had existed for 4 centuries was gone in a single afternoon. Mahmud reportedly sent the message, "I have destroyed something that was destroying me." The Tanzimat reforms, a series of modernization edicts beginning in 1839, attempted to transform the empire into a constitutional state along European lines. New schools, new legal codes, new newspapers. Istanbul got gas lamps, then electricity, then the Orient Express, which made its first Istanbul stop at Sirkeci Station on June 12, 1888, connecting the city to Paris in 87 hours. Agatha Christie wrote it and wrote a murder mystery set on it. The train was that famous. But reform and collapse were racing each other, and collapse was faster. The 20th century arrived, and the Ottoman Empire arrived with it, sick, humiliated, and desperate.
Era 7. The Great Unraveling. Istanbul, 1908 to 1923. In 1908, a group of reform-minded military officers called the Young Turks forced Sultan Abdulhamid II to restore the constitution he had suspended 30 years earlier. 2 years later, they depose him entirely. The Ottoman Empire enters its final decade under the control of a political party, the Committee of Union and Progress, that is simultaneously modernizing and radicalizing. Then comes World War I. The Ottomans enter on the German side in November 1914, gambling that a German victory will restore the empire's lost territories. The gamble fails completely, but the suffering it creates is almost incomprehensible. Between 1915 and 1923, the Armenian genocide kills between 600,000 and 1.5 million Armenian Christians. The historical estimate varies, but the fact of systematic killing does not. Deportation orders issued from Istanbul, death marches through the Anatolian desert. It is one of the 20th century's first industrialized attempts at ethnic elimination. Istanbul's own Armenian community, once numbering in the hundreds of thousands, is decimated. The city that had been home to a dozen ethnicities for 500 years becomes for the first time in its history a place of ethnic terror.
World War I ends with the Ottoman Empire on the losing side. British, French, and Greek forces occupy Istanbul. Troops march through the streets of the city that had humiliated every army for 1,000 years. For the first time since 1453, foreign soldiers control the Bosphorus. But Istanbul produces, at this exact moment of maximum humiliation, the figure who saves it: Mustafa Kemal. A general, a military hero of Gallipoli, where in 1915 he had told his troops, "I am not ordering you to attack, I am ordering you to die. In the time that passes until we die, other troops and commanders can come forward and take our places." His troops died. The Allied attack failed. Kemal became a legend. When the Greeks, emboldened by Allied support, launched an invasion of Anatolia in 1919, Kemal organized resistance from the Anatolian interior. He fought the Greek army, the French, the Armenians, and the remnants of the Ottoman Sultanate simultaneously for 3 years. In September 1922, the Turkish War of Independence ended with Greek forces expelled from Anatolia. In October 1923, the Republic of Turkey was declared. And Mustafa Kemal, who would rename himself Atatürk, father of the Turks, made a decision that stunned the world. The capital of the new republic would not be Istanbul. It would be Ankara, a small, unremarkable city in central Anatolia. Istanbul, for the first time in 1,600 years, was not the capital of anything.
Era 8. Reinvention. Istanbul, 1923 present. Atatürk's reasoning was cold and brilliant. Istanbul was surrounded by water, vulnerable to naval bombardment, associated with the old imperial order, and still partly occupied by foreign powers. Ankara was defensible, central, and unmistakably Turkish. The new republic needed a new center. But Istanbul refused to be irrelevant. Atatürk himself,
even while governing from Ankara, spent his summers in a cream-colored mansion on the Bosphorus called Floria. He loved the city he had dethroned. He introduced the Latin alphabet to replace Arabic script in 1928, and Istanbul's teachers retrained themselves practically overnight, teaching their students to write in an entirely new script within months. He banned the fez, the round red hat that had become a symbol of Ottoman identity, and mandated Western-style hats. He abolished the caliphate. He gave women the right to vote in 1934, 11 years before France did the same. Istanbul absorbed each transformation and kept moving. Through the 20th century, the city grew with the chaotic energy of a place that cannot stop. Rural migration from Anatolia brought millions of new residents in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Entire hillsides were covered in gecekondu, built overnight informal housing, that the city first ignored, then demolished, then incorporated. The population that had fallen to 500,000 in 1920 reached 1 million by 1950, then 2 million, then 5 million. Today, 17 million.
Not everything in Istanbul's 20th century was a success story. In September 1955, a pogrom, organized by nationalist groups and reportedly with government knowledge, targeted the city's remaining Greek, Armenian, and Jewish communities. For 2 days, mobs moved through Greek neighborhoods on the islands and in the Beyoğlu district, destroying homes, businesses, and churches. 37 people died. Thousands of Greeks fled Turkey permanently. The community that had lived in Istanbul continuously since 657 BC, since Byzantium himself stepped ashore, was effectively ended. A minority that had numbered 100,000 in 1923 fell to fewer than 3,000 by the end of the century.
The two suspension bridges spanning the Bosphorus, the first opened in 1973, the second in 1988, the third in 2016, carry 400,000 vehicles a day between Europe and Asia. Every driver crossing those bridges participates, without knowing it, in the same geographic drama that drew Byzantium to this peninsula 2,700 years ago. The strait is still there. The two continents are still there. The city is still in between. Istanbul is still the city that refuses to choose sides.
6,000 years. Greek colonists, Roman emperors, Byzantine mosaic makers, Ottoman sultans, Janissary soldiers, Armenian survivors, Atatürk's republic. 17 million people crossing a bridge between worlds every morning. This city has been burned, looted, conquered, renamed, reduced, and reborn so many times that resilience isn't even the right word anymore. Resilience implies struggle. Istanbul doesn't struggle to survive. It simply outlasts everything.
Here is what I think about when I stand on the Galata Bridge and watch the fishermen casting their lines into the Golden Horn, the same harbor Byzantium chose, the same water the Byzantines watched for enemy ships, the same strait the Ottoman fleet crossed, is that every city believes it is permanent. Every empire believes it is forever. Istanbul is the only place on earth that proves, visibly in stone and in water, that nothing is, and yet the city itself endures. Maybe that is what this city whispers to everyone who has ever lived in it. Not that they are permanent, but that the place where they stood and loved and built and fought, that place will remain long after everything else is forgotten. That might just be enough. Istanbul's story stayed with you? If you felt something watching this, drop a comment below telling me which era hit hardest. Was it the fall of Constantinople? The Ottoman Golden Age? The birth of a republic? And if this is the kind of history that makes you feel genuinely alive, subscribe. We do this every week. We'll see you in the next one.